Hey guys! So today Eve and I are going to talk about prioritize. Yeah, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how would you prioritize project constraints such as time, quality, and cost? Which one goes first and which one goes last, and why? Well, that's a very good one. It really sort of depends on the stakes and the specifics of what we're dealing with. That sounds really fluffy, but it is not that difficult. So an example would be if you tell me that I have to pick in which order, like time, quality, and cost. Well, time is always going to go last because, or will it? Because the reality is that if I have endless amounts of time, then I can put that last. If I have endless amounts of money, I can put cost last. Quality, well, that's also it also depends, because the reality is that if someone gives me a deadline, guys, and it's a hard deadline, literally breach of contract or something like that, then that has to be prioritized above the other things depending on how long this thing is going to take. So the thing that I usually do, what I tell people, is that start by putting quality first. The reason behind that is because you basically have a certain amount of time to do something, which means that if you already know that you have time on your side, then it will be cheaper for you to prioritize quality in the beginning of things, simply because, and we're going to touch on what quality actually means. The reason being because you can always speed up things at a later stage. The problem is that if you compromise on quality and the end product actually becomes very unfeasible, like the thing falls together or so forth, you're very unlikely to get any further on this thing, which is now the problem with quality comes in. Okay, what is quality? Well, it depends on the nature of the project. If you have a simple hackathon type of MVP thing that you need to ship as quickly as possible because you don't really have all that much money or you don't really have all that much time, then the quality investment that you make has to stand in proportion to what you're trying to ship. This is what I tell the teams that I work with, where I tell them that there are a million things that you can do in order to increase quality of your software. But that's not really relevant if all you're shipping is a fairly simple project. But at the same time, if quality never matters, if it doesn't matter at all, then the issue is you have is, well, now all of a sudden the system doesn't work. And so what I tell people is that the goal for any software developer and any software team is not to ship as quickly as possible at the lowest cost. The goal is for you to ship what is necessary to meet the goals of the project on time and on budget. That means that your quality, your focus on how much overhead you add to your process and how much testing you do, or how much, it's always a way of. You shouldn't skip it just so that you can finish early or under budget. You should try to appropriately measure how much do you have to invest to meet the expectations. That's what you should be going for. And that basically means that if you start with that mindset around quality, you won't invest more quality, you won't spend time doing pointless stuff for things that you may not necessarily know. This is very difficult, guys, because I have met so many software developers who do this wrong, on both spectrums. Either they underdo everything and everything's basically a big fucking hack to them, or they overdo it and they have so much process they can never actually ship anything. They spend more time defining what to do than they actually do shipping things, and that's the sweet spot I'm looking for. I'm saying that you need to meet your expectations. That should be the goal, and that's sort of like saying finding the balance between all of these sorts of things. Because time and cost, as an example, are just these are things that have to give away depending on how much quality you want to actually introduce. And of course, as I always like to say, you can't scale talent. So in some cases, time, quality, and cost, none of it actually matters, because you fundamentally don't, and this is not just a cost thing, you actually lack the necessary skill set within the group or the necessary people to deliver whatsoever. I've been in many projects now, guys, where people talk about, well, everything takes too long. They always tell me the same things, like they have issues with quality, or the thing is costing too much, or it's taking too long, etc., etc. And it always turns out the same way when I deal with these sorts of issues. It turns out that actually the reason why they are not performing or so forth is because of the inherent or the fundamental lack of the talent necessary to achieve the goals. Because if you have the right people in place, then things things will move faster, quality will go up, and costs will go down, because these are the people who know actually how to do that. And that's why I can't tell you that you should always take one above the other, because it really comes down to how good are you at figuring out how to get the results that you need for the given project. And that comes with not just seniority, it comes with it's a, how do I put this in a good way? So like, you can teach 100 people how to play the guitar, but only a few of them are going to be rock stars. Only a few of them will actually be so good that they can actually do that at a level that is higher than most people. And that's what I tell people, that that you can't have you can always find people who can sort of go through the same sort of motions and say the same things, but the thing that dictates whether or not you actually have a team that knows how to prioritize these three things, and other factors of course as well, it really comes down to, do you have the sort of people who understand how to reach goals? That's what it comes down to, because the real answer to this question is that you can put any of them at the front, because they are all measurements of how, it's like a gauge for each of them, like where, like, you have to find the right setting to meet the expectations of the product that you're dealing with. So what I want you to take away from this is that, as a general rule of thumb, I tell people that quality should be the first thing that you prioritize. And that's not, when I say that, I do not mean wasting time on needless processes or anything like that. It's about figuring out what is the appropriate amount of quality and setup and overall overhead we need in our process in order to reach our goals. Because as I've said before, guys, I've dealt with so many teams like this, like they basically just start ad hocing things together. That always turns out poorly, unless they literally don't have time to do anything else, or the project is like a one-day project where they're gonna make this thing work for an MVP or something like that. Then it doesn't really matter what process they have; they can like just ad hoc everything, right? But long term, if you have anything that is remotely serious, it's better for you to actually set up a good work foundation and start from there. Because if you know what you're doing, the total time that you will spend on development will be lower if you actually know how to set up this sort of work process. The problem is, as I said, when you're dealing with people who don't really understand how to do that, they go to or like they think they understand what quality means, and all of a sudden you have like endless scrum meetings and endless planning meetings, like so forth and so on. These are as I said, these are the people who they talk the talk, but they don't know how to walk the walk. The people that I deal with, that you should understand that there is a sweet spot for how much overhead you add to any given process, and that sweet spot is found in is found by you understanding what you need to ship on budget and on time. You usually meet your expectations, but as I said, that really comes down to the inherent talent of the people that you are dealing with, and that's what makes this so tricky, and that's why there's no golden rule for this. So my suggestion to you is to think in this manner. Figure out how to set up a streamlined work process for you and your team. It's sort of the bare minimum that you know that you need to do in order for the system to always be working, and where you have a reasonable chance to actually be on time, for example. When you do that, you start off on the right foot. If it turns out that things take longer, or you sort of see that, it's not I'm going to miss the deadline, or the costs are like going too high and so forth, then you adjust. Then you lower the quality gauge as you see that you actually can't afford to have this must focus on quality. And that is the best way for you to think about it, I argue. The reason being because quality always has to let go when you have problems meeting your deadlines, and things are starting to be too costly. But if you don't start in that area, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot immediately, because the problem with not having anything related to quality in your process is that things actually start costing more, and it starts taking longer, because the shittier the code gets, the more likely, well, in theory at least, you are to actually have to take even longer to fixing bugs and figuring out what the code does, etc., etc. So starting with quality and scaling it down as needed and finding that sweet spot is what I suggest to people when they set up a work process. Have a great day.